All right, good afternoon, and happy International Women's Day. Yes, excellent. My name is Bria Marcello, and I'm the Director of Diversity Resources here on campus, which is inside the Division of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. My office focuses on faculty and staff professional development and engagement, including events like this one. Although I'm standing here, I definitely don't do the work alone. I want to acknowledge Elizabeth Lara for coordinating this event. Probably got a lot of emails from her. Thank you. I also want to thank our partners with the Iowa Network for Women in Higher Education, who have their annual conference each year, and there's some handouts on your table about them. This year's theme is Lifting as We Climb. So feel free to reach out or engage with that program as well and with those partners. I also want to acknowledge the Women at Iowa group, who also is here, right here on University of Iowa's campus. They have been working diligently for the past year to create space for women to have dialogue and discussion about their experiences. So can we get a round of applause for all of our partners? I have the absolute pleasure of introducing an incredible leader on campus whose presence alone continues to challenge systems that keep women on the outside, Dr. Denise Martinez. Dr. Martinez is a faculty member and clinician in the Department of Family Medicine. Dr. Martinez is also the Associate Dean for Cultural Affairs and Diversity Initiatives in the University of Iowa Carver College of Medicine. She has served in that office since 2011, but was promoted from assistant to associate dean just this past year. She is the youngest associate dean of a medical school in the country. She earned her BA degree in biology from Seattle Pacific University and her MD from Tufts University School of Medicine in Boston. Dr. Martinez is currently the faculty advisor for a number of medical student organizations, including the Student National Medical Association, the Latino Medical Association, and the Minority Association of Pre-Health Students. Through her work with students, she has earned the prestigious Hawkeye Award for Faculty Advisor of the Year for the entire University of Iowa in 2014. Dr. Martinez was also selected to lead University of Iowa Healthcare with the implementation and incorporation of Culture Vision, a cultural competency software to help create a more inclusive healthcare network for patients. Additionally, she led the charge to obtain the University of Iowa Summer Health Professions Education Program, a program of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, which is a free summer program for 80 underrepresented college students to connect into the health profession schools. And for her work in this area, she was given the UI Diversity Catalyst Award in 2017. She has been named Physician of the Year several times by the University of Iowa Mobile Clinics, a free clinic system to underserved populations, and she helps to co-direct those clinics that see more than 500 patients a year. In 2018, she was also awarded the top 40 under 40 people in minority health from the National Minority Quality Forum, as well as the 40 under 40 from the Corridor Business Journal. Today, her session, Crushing the Imposter Syndrome, will give you a sneak peek into her brilliance and success. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Denise Martinez.
So I'm very happy to be here today. I just ran over here from clinic, and I'll be running back to clinic after this. But thank you for the kind introduction, which I was hoping that they would cut down, but that's okay. So it's, first of all I have to say is that I'm super honored to be asked to be here to talk today. And it's a nice full room, which is very also nice / intimidating. These are the things I will be admitting today. The other thing I want to admit today is that I literally just got back from maternity leave. So I just had a baby, and here he is. His name is Zane Martinez Grinzalski, poor little guy, but That's when he was 3 weeks old in his Hawkeye best. But because of this, my brain is still a little bit mushy. So if you see errors or if I have word finding issues or anything like that, you give me grace, right? Grace and forgiveness. Thank you. So here's another picture because I think he's so cute. And this is a great way to start a lecture. And one more picture. And in this picture, I want you to notice that Zane is an imposter because he is not a doctor. So do not listen to Zane when he gives you advice because it is not accurate advice, as he is impostoring a doctor in that picture. Okay. So, I call him Smushy, yes, poor little guy. So today, when I was asked to talk about something, really what came to my mind first was imposter syndrome. I think it's something that so many people feel and we just don't talk about enough, particularly in these kinds of environments. And I am more than happy to share my story and all the things that I've thought about myself. So we will go through some of those things in my story and some of the things that I think I have learned and I am learning as I continue to also work in imposter syndrome, okay? So let me talk about my journey. So a lot of times people ask me, when did you know that you wanted to be a doctor? So I'm an MD, I see patients still, I do family medicine, so prenatal care, geriatric care, chronic disease management, a whole bunch of things. And I knew from about this age that I wanted to be a doctor. And the reason why I wanted to be a doctor, so how did I get from this to this? That's my doctor photo, was because of this. So here I was, the day my little baby sister, Denise Martinez, was born. And many of you might know Denise Martinez, who works here at the University of Iowa. Thank goodness, she's wonderful. But she's my little baby sister. I'm sure she loves when I get to say that. And when my mom was pregnant with her, when I got to go with her to the physician, there was this woman who was amazing, and she's the doctor, and she just did all this great stuff, and then she brought Danielle into the world. And I thought, gosh, that is something that I want to do too. So maybe one day I'll be a doctor. So that's when it got into my brain. And then she ended up being a great little sister. So I just thought I'd add that because I knew she was going to be here today. So there she is right there. So next, I went through school, and I honestly, to be honest, didn't feel a ton of imposter syndrome in high school or junior high. I was one of those students who I didn't work particularly hard, and I did okay. And so I thought, well, after this, I'll go to college, and it will be probably the same way. I didn't apply to any, I knew some people who went to Seattle Pacific University, which is the school I went to in Seattle. That's where we're from originally. And I said, okay, well, this is a place I know, but I didn't even consider other schools or even schools outside of my region, because that is something that was sort of way beyond me, and I didn't even think I, potentially could deserve to be in another type of institution, although this is a great school, so I won't put that. But that's my thought. And as soon as I got there my freshman year, and I thought, I'm going to declare myself as a pre-medical student. And then what I realized is that everybody is a pre-medical student, or at least that's what it felt like. Going to a small institution, it felt like over half of the freshman class was pre-med that first semester, which was a lot. And one of the other things I realized is that, not studying in high school and college, that does not work. You actually do need to study, and you also need to know how to study, not only that. And so one of the first classes that I took was general chemistry. And if you know anything about general chemistry, that is what we would call a weed out class, right? So I was in that weed out class. I wasn't studying or didn't even actually know how to study very well, and I did not do very well. And so instantly I went from thinking, I'm not so much of an imposter, I'm meant to be here. I kind of felt that way already, to, I don't know if I could ever be a doctor. I can't do general chemistry. So then I met with my pre-health advisor, and he sat down with me and he said, Denise, there is no way you will ever go to medical school. And I said, oh. And guess what? I mean, I totally believed him. Like, why wouldn't you? He had been there, what felt like 100 years, who knows, it was probably like 20 years. He had been there a long time. He had seen a lot of students. Why would he tell me not the truth? You know, that my ability to do general chemistry directly correlated to my ability to become a physician. And so I still wanted to believe the dream, even though now I was feeling extremely, I just felt like I just couldn't do it. But I thought, well, maybe instead of being a pre-medical student, I'll be a secret pre-medical student. And so I thought I would just kind of continue on and just hope for the best, even though I was pretty certain it was never going to work out. So that's my secret pre-medical student phase. Okay. But then one summer, I was looking for potential opportunities, and there was a summer program at the University of Washington School of Medicine for undergraduate minority students who are interested in going to medical school. And I thought, I should probably at least try to apply for this. And once I applied, I actually got in. And of course, the first thing I thought is, wow, nobody applies to this program. I'm impressed that I got in. So it must not be a very popular program. But in this summer program, I was able to find mentors, particularly women mentors, women of color, people of color, all sorts of different people who were able to look at me and say, do you know what? You can do this. And I was like, I'm not sure about it. And as a matter of fact, the first day, they looked at us in this crowd, and the first thing that they said to us was, every single one of you can be a doctor. And I said, they are liars here. But honestly, by the end, and by the time I had spent a lot of time with these mentors, I started to believe that maybe this is something that I could actually do. So it was that following year that I actually applied to medical school. And I thought I had absolutely no chance whatsoever. But believe it or not, I got into 7 medical schools, which was sort of blew my mind. And I ended up choosing to go to Tufts University School of Medicine. The acceptance rate at Tufts is 4%. So 4% of the people who apply get in. And when I heard that and I knew that, I'm like, oh my gosh, what a mistake. They made the biggest mistake. There must be like 3 Denise Martinez's or something like that. Like, how did I kind of slip through the cracks and get into this institution with lots of other students who went to fancy schools and are doing such great things and have a better, and probably didn't get a C in general chemistry. So I was feeling pretty out of my league, especially when I got first thing to medical school. I just felt like, gosh, it was such an amazing mistake, but I'm here, so now I'm gonna try to like make up for it, right? So this is my white coat ceremony from medical school. What you can notice is a couple of things. There's no lighter. I'm very excited. I also have giant hair. I think there was a nor'easter that day, so it sort of grew as the day went on. But as I was shaking this very fancy dean's hand, I thought, wow, again, I do not belong here, and I am so glad. However I was able to swindle my way into here, I'll take it, but it was definitely like, I do not deserve to be here, like, whatsoever. But I made it, and believe it or not, I graduated. So I did. I graduated from medical school. And one of the things, so Tufts happens to be the most expensive medical school in the country. But the only bonus is that when you get your certificate from graduating, it's like triple the size of any other certificate. So I feel like every $100,000 that I paid toward this education is this giant certificate. So it's on my wall because I feel very strongly about the giant certificate. But I did end up graduating. And not only that, I did okay in medical school. And not only that, I was awarded the top student going into family medicine from my institution in a big ceremony. And again, through this process, I'm like, man, I am lucky. I am so lucky that nobody knows that I'm able to kind of slip through the cracks and do all this stuff. And it's my luck. I'm a very, very lucky person. And I also am like, I must be like a good swindler or charming. I must like fool all of these people all the time. I can fool them all the time. And so I thought, okay. So the next thing I decided, okay, well, I know I'm going to do family medicine. And I ended up matching here in Iowa, from Boston to Iowa. And I told everybody I'm moving to a very, very small town called Iowa City, Iowa, to work at the University of Iowa Hospitals and Clinics, because I thought that was the small town. But now we actually live in West Liberty, and I realize there are much smaller towns. So I became a doctor, and all of a sudden, people called me doctor, and I wore not the short coat, so the short coat's for the med students or PA students or other students, and I wore the long coat, which is kind of a big deal. And suddenly, people asked me questions, and I was the authority. And man, I was like, you are talking to the wrong person. I remember the first night I was on call, the nurse came up to me and she said, I think we need to give Tylenol to this patient. And I was like, can I give Tylenol to this patient? What is the dose of Tylenol? I need to look that up. Like, just feeling completely inept, and feeling very much like an imposter. And if those of you who might work with residents, residents are a bit of an imposter, especially at first. But subsequently, they do learn, and I did learn quite a bit about medicine and started practicing. So then, became a doctor, and I graduated. And my chair at the time, Dr. Paul James, who kind of scared me a little bit, but I did like him, he sat me down and he said, I want you to join the faculty. And I'm like, what does that mean? Because I had no idea what academic medicine was. And I didn't know what a faculty member was in academic medicine. He said, no, we want you to join because we think you can teach and, enhance the department and see patients. It will be great. And I said, sounds good to me. And then he asked me, where did I see myself in like 5 to 10, well, more like 10 to 15 years? And I said I saw myself as like in a dean's office, a dean of diversity, because those were the first people who ever looked at me and said, you can be a doctor, you can do this, and we will help you through this process. And I thought, that sounds pretty fun. I would like to do that one day. And he looked at me and he said, Denise, 15 years, you got that. And I said, 15 years, not too bad. But believe it or not, 2 weeks later, I was the interim associate dean of the College of Medicine. So what happened was Benita Wolf, who was in that position at that time, was moving because of her husband in his position, and they needed a faculty member to play in that, or to not play, but to be in that role. And so, and I had done a lot of diversity work because that was what I enjoyed through residency and through medical school. And I happened to have more experience than any other faculty who applied. But I said, oh, wow. So from going, and if you know anything about the hierarchy of medicine, residents are not very high on that hierarchy. So I went from a very low resident, and then 2 weeks later after graduation, I went to an associate dean level. And I was sitting at the table with people like Paul Rothman, who's now the dean at Hopkins, and other people, and I thought, wow, they made a big mistake. I am not supposed to be at this table, and I'm not supposed to be, helping to decide the trajectory of our college. And how the heck did I end up, being able to swindle into this position? And I knew that it would probably only last a year. because it was an interim position, and I technically couldn't have the position because you have to have 5 years of post-training experience to be an associate dean in the College of Medicine. So I said, well, it will be a fun year. I'm just gonna do what I think is great. And I did. So I developed a number of student organizations, including things like MAPS, which is the Minority Association of Pre-Health Students, started LMSA, the Latino Medical Student Association, worked with SNMA, the Student National Medical Association. I did all these things that I just thought would be super fun, had students over, got to know them, got to invest in them, and I thought, this is really great. And so when that year was up, they invited me to stay on as the assistant dean. So I was like, okay, fair enough. Well, here we go. So through this work, though, I was able to help bring that same exact summer program that I had done, I think, 17 years earlier as an undergraduate student, now here to the University of Iowa. We were able to get the grant from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation to have 80 students here this summer. We pay for everything, room, board, stipends, and just invest in them and love them so that they too know that one day they can be health professionals in concert with other wonderful colleagues like the colleagues from the College of Public Health, dentistry, pharmacy, and nursing. So, all of these dreams are sort of coming true for me, and I get to do so much of the work that I absolutely love. And I get to, as I feel like I'm sort of swindling and flying under the radar in order to accomplish this. And then I get some awards. I got the Hawkeye Award. I got an award at the Ritz-Carlton in DC. It was a black tie event for the 40 under 40 for minority health. And as I was there winning this award because of some of the work that I have done here, I thought, again, wow, well, first of all, I thought, wow, I'm really sick. So I was pregnant at the time and felt horrible. But also that, again, I don't deserve to be here. I haven't really done very much, all of that sort of thing. The other two people who were recognized that day were people you might recognize. So, the Congresswoman and Congressman, Maxine Waters and John Lewis. And I felt a lot of the other people went up to them afterwards to take pictures with them. And I felt like I didn't deserve to do that, but my husband did. So that's my husband. So he ran up to them after the award ceremony. He's like, my wife's being honored. Quick. So anyway, he got his photos. I did not get my photos though. So what is, and actually even recently, so this is Gary Ames. So when I was an undergraduate student, I had a scholarship for minority students called the Ames Scholarship, and that's Gary Ames. And for the last 2 years, I was asked to go back onto the board or join the board of trustees of my undergrad. And now I sit on the board with Gary Ames, the guy whose scholarship that I was able to attend this university on, which was very, very, it just felt very interesting. And it was a really interesting experience too, because recently that pre-health, actually I was just in Seattle a couple weeks ago for a board meeting, and that same pre-health advisor who came up to me and said, you will never be a doctor, said, Denise, we are so proud of you. You've done such great stuff. I was like, okay, fair enough, okay. So, pop quiz. These are some of the things that I have felt during my journey in leadership and doing the work that I love. And these are my answers to a lot of these questions for yes. So I'm just going to read off these questions to you to see if it might resonate with you. So, do you secretly worry that others will find out that you're not as smart or capable as they think you are? Do you sometimes shy away from challenges because of nagging self-doubt? Do you tend to chalk up your accomplishments to being a fluke or no big deal, or the fact that people just like you? Do you hate making a mistake, being less than fully prepared, or not doing things perfectly? Do you tend to feel crushed by, or even constructive criticism, seeing as it is evidence of your ineptness? Do you believe that other people, students, colleagues, competitors, etc., are smarter or more capable than you? So these are all questions that have to relate to, oh wait, one more. Do you live in fear of being found out, discovered, or unmasked? Okay. So as a doctor, if you answer a number of these questions, yes, then the diagnosis is imposter syndrome, right? That is the diagnosis. So what do we do with that diagnosis? So, imposter syndrome, yes. So what do we do? And the hard thing with imposter syndrome is that it really fools us in a number of ways. And we just always feel like at any second, somebody's going to find us out, that we are doing all of this stuff, but we're really not who we say we are, or what maybe people think that we are. So with imposter syndrome on the left is what people think sometimes like, this is what I know. I know this much. But maybe other people think this is what I think others know. Everybody knows more than me too. But in reality, this is probably more accurate. So this is what I know. This is what other people know. And sometimes there's intersections of those things, right? And as my mother says, nobody thinks about you as much as you think that they do. I think it's easy to think sometimes like, oh, everybody's thinking about me, or they're going to find me out, or what's going to happen. In reality, they're probably not thinking about you in the first place. So it's super, super common. And when it was first studied, it was in the 1970s after looking at women in academics and noting that so many of them had these same feelings. And that's when it was named imposter syndrome. But a lot of us feel like what we can do is we can explain away all of these things that have happened to us. And so there's lots of creative answers. So is it luck or timing? I've certainly felt that way. Like, I am so lucky. Luck, 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 luck. Luck has gotten me here, very much so. People have low expectations. I like this, a computer error. So I think I was sort of wondering about a computer error when I got into medical school. Likability or other creative excuses. So I think there can be lots of creativity to the excuses that we make, but that doesn't mean that they're true or they're valid, right? So what I think about imposter syndrome is that it's an ugly beast that literally needs to be stomped down in our lives, okay? So that's Mario, and he's kind of cute, but you know what I mean. So an ugly beast that we stomp down on a regular basis. So with the diagnosis of imposter syndrome, so how do we combat this? And one of the things that I think is extremely helpful is first to try to recognize imposter syndrome in yourself. It's really hard to, and maybe you don't have imposter syndrome. The latest data shows that about 78% of us do. So you might be in the small percentage. I kind of doubt it. I think everybody else doesn't recognize it. But that it is something that we have to recognize in ourselves. We can't change it. We can't move forward until we actually diagnose it for ourselves. I think the other thing that's super, super important is to recognize that basically we all have imposter syndrome. Very much so. So I really liked this graphic. It says people who get imposter syndrome, other people who get imposter syndrome, and literally everybody else. So yes, this is the imposter syndrome. So I think that not enough people talk about it, even though it's extremely, extremely prevalent. And I think that there is some sort of feeling of relief when you know that so many people are feeling this way on a regular basis, because that probably is the truth. Other things that I think are really important is to fake it till you make it. And so I talk a lot about this when I give lectures to medical students who are feeling very imposter-y. And I know for myself, again, sometimes I'm sitting at what I would consider important tables or other places and say, oh, am I really supposed to be here today? Is this really my seat at this table? And sometimes I don't feel that way, but what I do is I say, well, consider the opposite. Consider that you do have a seat at this table. And today, you're going to fake like you're supposed to be at that table. And you're going to behave like you're supposed to be at that table. And you're going to ask questions like you're supposed to be at that table. And you can contribute like you're supposed to be at that table. So even though I might not always feel like I'm meant to be at the table, I'm going to fake it and be at the table. And so I think that is super, super important. Fake it till you make it. And that is a very good strategy. Other things, and I think it's really important for all of us and myself to actually look objectively at the things that I've accomplished and the things that you have accomplished. Whether that's journaling it, whether it's writing a list, whether it's just thinking about it, but not everything you've ever been able to do is a fluke. It is because you have talents. It is because you have gifts. It is because you've worked hard. All of those things happen because of that. And so I know for myself, sometimes I'm like, I haven't really done that much, or I want to keep going and I want to keep going, but to like step back and say, objectively, I have done some stuff and it's okay. And I think that's really important as well. The next thing is to get external validation. Or sometimes when we do get external validation from people, when they say that was really good, or I liked when you did this, it's very easy to sort of brush that aside and say, that's not true, or they don't really know, or anything like that. But being willing when somebody is willing to kind of say those things to you, to let it just soak in and consider it for a moment and say, no, that was good, or that was the right thing. And so I think being able to listen to that validation is really, really important. The other piece that I think is extremely important is to just talk about it. So if you are feeling imposter-y, go to people and that you feel like you can trust, whether it's friends or mentors, that you can go and talk to these people, because it's amazing. And maybe some of you have read Becoming by Michelle Obama, but she talks a lot about imposter syndrome. Maya Angelou talks a lot about imposter syndrome. Albert Einstein talks a lot about imposter syndrome. It's a really, really common phenomenon, especially for even people that a lot of us would say we admire. And so I think the more that we're able to talk about it, we're able to normalize it and realize that it's actually not the truth. And then just be okay. And sometimes lean back and just straight up celebrate your own success. I know sometimes I'm so forward thinking. I'm like, okay, we got this. Now next. But for me, sometimes I know it's important just to sit down and be like, I did that. Yes. And be able to take it and internalize it. Because some people are able to do that. And not everybody doesn't always sort of celebrate their successes. So I think it's important to really try to internalize success when it happens. Okay, so how are we doing on time? What time is it? Perfect. So what I want to do, and again, do what you feel comfortable with. This can be sort of a vulnerable environment or place, or you might not be sitting with people that you might not know very well. But I think it'd be worth thinking about and discussing, if you're willing, some of these questions as we're trying to sort of shed some light and actually turn the flashlight on imposter syndrome. So some of the questions I'd like you to sort of discuss with the people around you or as a table. When was a time that you felt like an imposter, if there was one? What was the message you told yourself? What are ways that you can silence those messages through your own work and support of the community of women at Iowa? And what are some successes of yours that you are not taking ownership of? So, discuss. And as we're wrapping up, it sounds like there was some good conversation. Is there, I guess, from smiles and nods, or just nods, was there consensus that a lot of people are feeling this way? Yes, okay, very good, okay. Well, I'm so happy that I was able to be here today and to talk a little bit about this, and hopefully that you were able to share some of your experiences with each other. I'm also more than happy to connect at any time. I'm just getting back to work, but hopefully can connect with many of you in the future. I guess briefly, is there anything that anybody would like to briefly share about some of the things that they talked about? Or themes or strategies going forward? Everyone's looking around like, yes. Yeah, so absolutely. So it sounds like we're talking about how wonderful it is to have some space to let people know or talk about these things in a way that I think brings community. Yeah, absolutely. Other thoughts? I think that's it though. Thank you so much for having me.